Daniel Thornton stood at the stage depot, one hand on his daughter's shoulder. Watching dust rise from the approaching coach, spring sunshine warmed the Montana afternoon. He'd hired the best surveyor the Territorial University could recommend to Monroe, whose credentials impressed even the skeptical mine superintendent. Now, is that him? Papa? Emma asked, craning her neck. Should be. Daniel straightened his vest. The mineral survey would determine whether to expand operations into the Northern Territory. She. Everything depended on accurate mapping. The stage lurched to a stop. The driver climbed down, opened the door. A woman stepped out. She wore split riding skirts, practical boots, and a canvas jacket dusted from travel. In one hand, she carried a leather satchel. In the other, a professional surveyor's transit gleamed brass in the sunlight. Her hair, pinned sensibly back, showed streaks of sun bleaching. Her gaze swept the depot with calm assessment. Daniel's throat tightened. A Monroe. Abigail Monroe. Ah, Papa, Emma whispered, eyes wide. It's a lady surveyor. The woman approached, extending her hand. Mr. Thornton, I'm Abigail Monroe. I apologize if my arrival surprises you. The university often uses initials to avoid prejudgment of my work. Daniel shook her hand mechanically. Her grip was firm. Professional. Yes. Miss Monroe? I expected someone else entirely. Her smile held wry understanding. I assure you. My qualifications are exactly as stated in my correspondence. I've surveyed mining territory from Colorado to Wyoming. Shopyard Basin is saw. My geological assessments have proven reliable in 17 separate operations. Emma tugged his sleeve. Papa, she has real equipment. Look at that transit. Abigail knelt to Emma's level. You have a good eye. This is a K&E theodolite. Would you like to see how it measures angles? Could I? Emma's face lit with unguarded delight. Daniel found his voice. Miss Monroe, this is my daughter Emma. She's curious about most things. Curiosity is the beginning of all learning. Abigail stood, surveying equipment in hand. Shall we discuss the project? I'm eager to see your territorial maps and begin preliminary planning. Townspeople had stopped to stare. Mrs. Caldwell stood outside the general store, mouth slightly open. The banker's son pointed. Two miners nudged each other, grinning. Daniel felt heat creep up his neck. He'd asked for the best surveyor available. He'd gotten exactly that, just not in the form he expected. Emma grabbed Abigail's free hand. Our house is this way. Papa has maps in his study. Do you really measure mountains? Mountains, valleys, mineral deposits? Abigail let Emma lead her forward. The earth tells stories if you know how to read them. ADE. Daniel followed, acutely aware of every turned head, every whispered comment. His daughter walked beside a woman in split skirts carrying surveying equipment. Chattering about contour lines and elevation, Sarah would have been horrified. His late wife had believed in propriety above all else and proper roles and appropriate behavior. She'd have considered this arrangement scandalous. But Emma's eyes shone with a light he hadn't seen since Sarah died. His daughter asked question after question, and Abigail answered each one seriously, as though Emma's curiosity mattered. At the house, Daniel opened the door. I'll have Mrs. Chen prepare a room for you. We can discuss terms over supper. Thank you. Abigail stepped inside, immediately noticing the maps on his study wall. Excellent. These will give me baseline orientation. May I examine them? Of course. Daniel watched her move to his desk with confident purpose, setting down her equipment with practiced care. Emma pressed close. Will you show me your maps, the ones you made yourself? Abigail glanced at Daniel. He nodded slowly. I'd be happy to. Abigail said, Right after I speak with your father. Emma beamed. The door had opened, and Daniel wasn't certain he could close it again. The dining table disappeared beneath topographical charts. Abigail spread them carefully, weighing corners with salt cellars and candlesticks. Emma knelt on her chair, transfixed. See these lines? Abigail traced a finger along brown contours. Each one represents elevation. When they're close together, the land is steep. When they're far apart, it's gentle, like steps on a mountain. Emma breathed. Exactly like that. Abigail smiled. You're a natural reader. Daniel stood in the doorway, coffee growing cold in his hand. His daughter bent over maps with complete absorption, asking questions that revealed genuine understanding. When had Emma last engaged with anything this deeply? Not since Sarah's death. Not in 2 long years. Abigail pointed to symbols marked across the terrain. These indicate mineral deposits: copper, silver, traces of gold. Your father's mines follow these veins underground. How do you find them? Geological surveys, rock samples, water analysis. Sometimes you have to read what the earth keeps hidden. Abigail looked up at Daniel. Your northern territory shows promising formations. I'll need 3 weeks for thorough mapping. Emma's eyes widened. 3 weeks in the mountains. If your father approves the timeline. Daniel set down his cup. That's acceptable. I'll accompany you. The territory can be dangerous. I appreciate that. Abigail rolled the charts carefully. I work best with someone who knows the land. After dinner, Emma helped Abigail organize survey equipment. Daniel stepped out to the general store for supplies and walked into a wall of disapproval. De verdien aan bar. Mrs. Caldwell intercepted him at the counter. Daniel. A word. He nodded, stomach tight. Surely you're not actually hiring her. Mrs. Caldwell's voice dropped to a harsh whisper. A woman surveyor, it's unseemly. She's qualified. She wears trousers split up the middle and carries equipment like a man. Oh, what message does that send to impressionable young girls? Mrs. Caldwell glanced meaningfully toward his house. To Emma. Daniel's jaw clenched. The message that competence matters more than convention. A competence. Reverend Harris appeared at Mrs. Caldwell's shoulder. Daniel, I understand you're a widower raising a daughter alone. That's a burden. But hiring this woman, it sets a poor example. Young ladies need to understand proper spheres. Emma needs to understand that women can be capable and educated. Mrs. Caldwell's expression hardened. You're making a mistake. The whole town is talking. Daniel bought his supplies in silence and walked home. Through the window, he saw Abigail and Emma still bent over maps, lamplight golden on their faces. Emma laughed at something Abigail said, a sound he'd almost forgotten. And that free, d'une farce, inside. He found them tracing mountain ranges with colored pencils. Papa! Emma jumped up. Miss Monroe showed me how to calculate elevation using angles. It's mathematics. But useful mathematics. Is it now? Daniel couldn't help smiling. I've always believed mathematics serves best when applied to real questions. Abigail stood, stretching her back. Emma has an excellent spatial mind. She grasps concepts quickly. Emma beamed under the praise. Can Miss Monroe stay? Papa, the whole survey. That's the plan, even though Mrs. Caldwell doesn't like it. Daniel's smile faded. Emma had heard them at the store. Mrs. Caldwell's opinion doesn't determine our choices, he said carefully. Abigail began gathering charts. Emma, it's late. Help me put these away properly. After Emma went to bed, Daniel found Abigail on the porch, studying stars. The town pressure. He said quietly, I apologize. They're not accustomed to women who work outdoors. Abigail's voice held no bitterness. I'm accustomed to it. If you'd prefer to find someone else... No. The word came out sharper than intended. Emma needs this survey completed properly. We leave for the mountains in 3 days. Abigail studied him. She asks questions nobody's ever encouraged her to ask. That's a gift. Mr. Thornton, don't let anyone convince you otherwise. Daniel thought of Sarah, who gently discouraged Emma's endless curiosity about how things worked, about why and where and when, who'd steered her toward needlework and music instead of books and questions. 3 days, he repeated. Be ready at dawn. Abigail nodded. Inside, lamplight still glowed in Emma's room. His daughter was probably studying those charts again, dreaming of mountains and mathematics. The weight in Daniel's chest loosened slightly. Whatever the town thought, this felt right. Emma set the table with extra care, using the good plates Sarah had saved for special occasions. Is Miss Monroe coming for supper again? She is. Daniel checked the roast Mrs. Chen had prepared. 3 days had passed quickly tomorrow. They'd leave for the survey expedition. Abigail arrived precisely at 6, hair still damp from washing. She'd spent the day reviewing Daniel's existing geological reports, making notes in precise handwriting. Over dinner, Emma asked the question that had clearly been building. In Miss Monroe, why did you become a surveyor instead of something normal? Emma, Daniel began, but Abigail raised a hand gently. It's a fair question. She set down her fork. I taught music in Philadelphia for 3 years. Wore corsets that made breathing difficult. Spoke only when spoken to. I was dying inside. One polite nod at a time. Emma's eyes widened. But you were doing what ladies are supposed to do. I was doing what others expected. That's different from what I was meant to do. Abigail's hands stilled on the table. My father was a geologist. He taught me to read land formations before I could read books. After he died, I tried to be what everyone else wanted: proper, contained, decorative. It nearly crushed my spirit. What changed? Daniel asked quietly. I stopped trying to fit into someone else's idea of who I should be. I studied surveying at night, saved every penny, and moved west where competence mattered more than convention. Abigail met his eyes. It cost me friendships, social standing, the promise of an easy life. But I can breathe now. Daniel looked at his daughter. Your mother loved you very much. Emma. She wanted the best for you. But she stopped painting. Emma said softly, I remember. She had canvases in the attic. His throat tightened. She did. Before we married. She dreamed of being an artist. After propriety mattered more, she was a good woman. Emma. She believed she was making the right choices. Do you think she was happy? Emma's question hung in the air. Daniel couldn't answer. Abigail spoke instead. I think your mother loved you enough to want you to have choices she didn't have. That's what good parents do. They hope their children have more freedom. Not less. Papa. Emma looked at him. Do you want me to be proper or to be myself? Daniel's chest ached. I want you to be whoever you're meant to be. Sweetheart. Even if it scares me. Especially if it scares me. A knock interrupted the moment. Daniel opened the door to find Mayor Stevens flanked by Reverend Harris and the bank president. Daniel, I agree. The mayor's voice was grave. We need to speak. About Miss Monroe. Daniel stepped onto the porch, closing the door behind him. Gentlemen, we've given this consideration. Mayor Stevens said, We understand you hired her in good faith, but the situation has become untenable. Women are talking. Men are questioning your judgment. This affects the whole community. My survey affects the community. Your choice affects the community. Reverend Harris folded his arms. What you permit in your household influences other households. Young girls are asking why they can't study mathematics and science. Young women are questioning their roles. God forbid. Daniel said dryly. The bank president cleared his throat. There's also the matter of your business interests. Several mine investors have expressed concerns about your decision-making. If you proceed with this survey, you may find financing difficult to secure. There it was. The real pressure, his mine expansion, depended on community support and investor confidence. So you're asking me to dismiss Miss Monroe? We're suggesting you hire a male surveyor to verify her preliminary work. Save face for everyone. Mayor Stevens spread his hands reasonably. Nobody questions your intentions. Just reconsider the optics. Daniel looked through the window. Abigail was showing Emma something in a notebook. His daughter's face glowed with concentration. No, he said quietly. Daniel. No. Miss Monroe is qualified. She's exactly what I hired her to be. We leave tomorrow for the survey. When we return, I expect the same courtesy you'd extend to any professional I employ. The three men exchanged glances. Mayor Stevens shook his head slowly. You're making a mistake. For Emma's sake, if not your own. They left without another word. Inside, Emma was hugging Abigail goodnight. Hey, will you teach me more about maps when we get back? If your father permits it, Abigail smiled. He will. Emma squeezed Daniel's hand. Thank you for letting Miss Monroe stay. Papa, she makes me feel brave. After Emma went to bed, Daniel found Abigail preparing her equipment for tomorrow's departure. She worked by lamplight, checking each instrument methodically. They'll keep pressuring you, she said without looking up. I know. I can leave quietly. Complete a preliminary report and recommend someone else for the detailed work. Daniel watched the lamplight circle illumination against gathering darkness. A choice made visible. No, he said. Emma needs to see this. Needs to see that courage matters more than comfort. That doing right matters even when it costs. Abigail looked up. Something shifting in her expression. That's a hard lesson to teach. It's the only one worth teaching. The lamp burned steady. Tomorrow they'd head into the mountains, away from whispers and judgment. Tomorrow, Emma would see that her father chose truth over convenience. Whatever the cost, it would be worth it. The expedition wagon stood loaded before dawn. Daniel checked provisions while Abigail secured her surveying equipment with practiced efficiency. Emma practically vibrated with excitement. Dressed in practical clothing, her mother would never have permitted. Stay close to Mrs. Chen. Daniel told his daughter, mind her while we're gone. Can I come? Emma's face fell. The mountains are too dangerous for children. But when you're older, Daniel softened his tone. We'll be back in 3 weeks. You can study Miss Monroe's maps while we're gone. He kissed her forehead and climbed onto the wagon. Abigail sat beside him, her surveying transit secured carefully in its case. At church the previous Sunday, the distance had been unmistakable. Ladies moved away when Emma approached, creating visible empty space around the Thornton pew. His daughter's confusion transformed to hurt, then to something harder, a lifted chin, a straight back. She'd learned that dignity from watching Abigail sit alone across the aisle, unbothered by the pointed glances. Now, as they rode toward the mountains, Daniel felt the town's judgment like weight between his shoulders. You're quiet, Abigail observed. Thinking about Emma, what she faces while we're gone. She's stronger than you think. Children often are. Abigail adjusted her hat against the climbing sun. Mrs. Caldwell spoke to her after church. Emma handled it well. Daniel's hands tightened on the reins. What did Caldwell say? That unnatural women harm communities. That proper ladies stay in proper places. Abigail's voice remained even. Emma asked what made someone unnatural following their gifts or ignoring them. Mrs. Caldwell had no answer. Pride and worry warred in Daniel's chest. She shouldn't have to defend you. Or herself. Perhaps not. But she's learning that courage isn't comfortable. That's worth knowing. They rode in silence for a while. The town fell away behind them, replaced by pine forest and granite slopes. The air smelled of snowmelt and new growth. The first survey site was a ridge overlooking promising mineral deposits. Abigail set up her equipment with meticulous care, explaining each step as she worked. A key. The theodolite measures both horizontal and vertical angles, she said, adjusting brass knobs. By taking readings from multiple positions, I can map elevation and distance precisely. But Daniel found himself genuinely interested. He'd hired surveyors before, but never watched them work this closely. Abigail's hands moved with absolute confidence, her calculations swift and accurate. You're good at this, he said. I've had excellent teachers and considerable practice. She made another notation. Your northern territory shows interesting geological patterns. The mineral veins run deeper than your current maps indicate. Meaning your expansion plans are well-founded. If my preliminary readings hold, you're sitting on substantial deposits. She glanced at him. I knew so. Which means the investors questioning your judgment will look very foolish when this survey is complete. Daniel smiled despite himself. I do. Is that what we call vindication? I call it reading the evidence correctly. Deepened. Abigail packed her equipment. Shall we make camp tomorrow? I'll need to access the eastern ridge. That evening, they sat by firelight. The mountains rose dark against stars so bright they seemed close enough to touch. May I have heard Tori sigh. Emma asked me something yesterday. Daniel said. She wanted to know if I thought Sarah was happy. Abigail waited, not filling the silence. I couldn't answer. He continued. Sarah gave up painting to be a proper wife and mother. She never complained. But I wonder now if silence was the same as contentment. Probably not. Abigail stirred the fire. Most people who surrender their true selves aren't happy. They're just compliant. I don't want that for Emma. I know. That's why you're here instead of hiring someone else. Daniel studied her across the flames. The town thinks I'm reckless, indulging a whim at my daughter's expense. The town fears what it doesn't understand. Change frightens people. Abigail met his eyes. But Emma doesn't need protection from new ideas. She needs permission to explore them. You're teaching her that. No. You're teaching her that by defending her right to learn. I'm just the catalyst. Stars wheeled overhead, somewhere in the darkness. A night bird called. The mountains felt vast and clean, no whispers here. No judgment. Just land that told its stories honestly to anyone willing to listen. 3 more weeks, Daniel said. Then we go back and face whatever comes. Then we go back. Abigail agreed. And stand for what's right. Even when it costs, Daniel thought of Emma's lifted chin, her straight back, and that empty church pew. His daughter was learning courage from both of them. Whatever the town said, this was worth it. 6 days into the mountains. Daniel no longer questioned Abigail's expertise. She read terrain-like language pointing out fault lines, ancient waterways, mineral deposits written in stone strata. Her predictions proved accurate. Her calculations were flawless. This escarpment, she said, studying a granite face, formed during volcanic activity millions of years ago. The metamorphic pressure created perfect conditions for silver deposits. Your mines are tapping surface veins. But the real wealth lies deeper. Daniel examined the rock she indicated. How much deeper? 50 feet, perhaps 70. Your current shafts stop at 30. She made rapid notes in her survey book. With proper engineering, you could triple your output. That would require significant investment. It would require vision. Abigail glanced at him. Most miners think in terms of easy extraction, but the patient ones, the ones willing to dig deeper, they're the ones who build lasting operations. Is that a metaphor? It's geology. Though I suppose it applies to most things worth doing. She smiled slightly. Easy paths rarely lead to anything meaningful. They worked until sunset, then made camp in a mountain meadow. Wildflowers dotted the grass, lupine and paintbrush, their colors brilliant in fading light. Over supper, Daniel found himself talking about things he rarely discussed. His doubts about parenting, his uncertainty about teaching Emma to navigate a world that demanded conformity while punishing anything different. I don't know if I'm protecting her or failing her, he admitted. Sarah would have known what to do. Would she? Abigail stirred the pot. Or would she have simply followed convention without questioning it? That's not fair. Sarah was a good woman. Good and wise aren't always the same thing. Abigail served stew into tin plates. I don't doubt Sarah loved Emma. But love without permission to grow can be its own kind of cage. Daniel thought of those abandoned canvases in the attic. Sarah's dreams. Boxed and forgotten. My father supported my education in secret. Abigail continued. He knew society would resist. He taught me anyway, geology, mathematics, surveying, when he died. I was 17. His death freed me to pursue what he'd prepared me for. But it also left me alone in that pursuit. No family. My mother remarried quickly. Her new husband believed women needed protection from intellectual pursuits. We haven't spoken in 8 years. Abigail's voice remained steady. But Daniel heard old pain underneath. Authenticity costs everything sometimes. But conformity costs your soul. Yeah, is it worth it being alone? I'm not alone. I'm independent. There's a difference. And she met his eyes across the fire. Though I'll admit, partnership would be welcome. If I could find someone who saw competence instead of oddity. Daniel's chest tightened. The firelight caught gold in her hair, and her face showed strength, without hardness. Courage, without bitterness. You're teaching Emma something I couldn't, he said quietly. that there's more than one way to be a woman. More than one kind of strength. You're teaching her too. You're teaching her that her father values truth over comfort. In mine, that he'll stand for what's right, even when it's difficult. Abigail smiled. Yeah, that's the greatest gift a parent can give, modeling courage instead of just preaching it. They sat in comfortable silence after conversation ended. Stars emerged one by one, filling the sky with light. A cool breeze carried the scent of pine and stone. This is what partnership feels like. Daniel thought, someone who sees what you see, values what you value. Not romance exactly. Not yet. But something deeper. Foundation for something that could last. Tomorrow they'd reach the primary survey site. 2 weeks remained before returning to town, and whatever judgment waited there. But tonight, in the mountains where air was clean and stars were bright, Daniel felt something he hadn't felt since Sarah died, hope. The 11th day brought them to a narrow pass threading between granite walls. Abigail studied her maps, comparing them to the terrain. The promising deposits should be just beyond this passage. She said, geological surveys from 10 years ago indicated significant mineral concentrations, but no one's done detailed mapping. Daniel urged the horses forward. The passage narrowed, walls rising steep on both sides. Rock showed weathering, water damage, frost fractures, the slow work of seasons. Abigail raised her hand suddenly. Stop! He pulled the reins. What is it? She dismounted, approached the rock face with careful steps. Her fingers traced barely visible cracks running horizontal across granite. She pressed her ear against stone, tapped gently, listened. We need to go back, she said quietly. What now? Carefully. Don't make sudden movements. Her voice stayed calm, but urgency ran underneath. This entire face is unstable. Those fractures indicate stress, probably from spring melt undermining the base. One wrong vibration could bring it down. Daniel looked up. The rock face towered above them, tons of granite held in place by increasingly fragile structure. How do you know? Training, experience. The angle of fractures, the spacing pattern, the sound when struck. She moved back to the wagon. Trust me. Mr. Thornton, we need to retreat and find another route. He trusted her. They backed the wagon slowly, Abigail watching the rock face with trained eyes. They'd barely cleared the passage when thunder shook the mountain. The rock face collapsed in massive sheets. Granite slabs the size of wagons crashed down, filling the entire passage with debris. Dust exploded outward in choking clouds. The horses screamed and reared. Daniel fought to control them, ears ringing from the thunder. When the dust finally settled, the passage had vanished, replaced by a jumble of broken rock 30 feet high. Abigail stood frozen, staring at the destruction. If we'd been 20 seconds slower, she didn't finish the sentence. She didn't need to. Daniel climbed down from the wagon, legs unsteady. You saw that coming. You read signs I couldn't even see existed. That's why you hired a surveyor. But her voice shook slightly. We'll need to circle east. Add 3 days to the timeline. I don't care about the timeline. Daniel looked at the rock fall, then at Abigail. I do. You just saved both our lives with professional expertise the town wants to dismiss as unseemly. The town dismisses competence that challenges their assumptions. Abigail turned away from the destruction. It's easier than admitting they might be wrong. And they found an alternate route and completed the survey over the following days. The mineral deposits proved as rich as Abigail predicted, possibly richer. Her maps showed veins running deep into the mountain. indicating resources that could sustain operations for decades. This is extraordinary work, Daniel said, reviewing her final calculations. Better than any survey I've commissioned. It's thorough work, accurate work. Abigail packed her instruments carefully. And work you'll face pressure to verify by hiring a male surveyor to double-check my findings. The truth of that settled heavy between them. Daniel thought of the town council's delegation. Their reasonable voices suggesting reasonable compromise. And they'll expect me to dismiss you, he said quietly. They'll make it sound like wisdom and caution. Will you? Daniel studied her across the campfire. This woman whose expertise had literally saved his life. Bashui, whose competence exceeded most men's he'd worked with, whose patient teaching had lit a spark in Emma that showed no signs of fading. No, he said, I'm not dismissing you. When we return tomorrow, I'm standing for truth regardless of cost. I know moi. That may be considerable cost. I know. He met her eyes. But Emma's watching. She needs to see that courage matters, more than comfort. That doing right matters, even when it's hard. Abigail smiled, then genuine warmth breaking through her careful professional distance. Your daughter is lucky to have you. She's lucky to have met you. We both are. The final night before returning to town. Daniel lay awake watching stars. Somewhere below, the town waited with its judgments and expectations. His mine expansion depended on investor confidence. Emma's social standing hung in the balance. But Abigail had saved his life. Her work could transform his entire operation. And Emma was learning that authenticity mattered more than approval. B. Whatever came next, he wouldn't retreat from truth. Not now. Not ever. They rode back into town under midday sun. The main street bustled with activity miners finishing shifts. Merchants closing for lunch. Heads turned as Daniel's wagon passed. Conversations stopped mid-word. Emma burst from the house and ran to meet them, throwing herself into Daniel's arms. You're back. Mrs. Chen said you might be another week. We finished early. Daniel hugged his daughter tight. Miss Monroe's work was efficient. Emma turned to Abigail with shining eyes. Did you map everything? Can I see the charts? Later, sweetheart, Daniel said. Miss Monroe needs rest after 3 weeks in the mountains. But the rest never came. That Sunday, Reverend Harris delivered a sermon on natural roles and proper spheres. His text came from Proverbs, something about virtuous women and household management. The message landed with the subtlety of a hammer. When we abandon God-ordained roles, Harris intoned, we invite chaos into our communities. Men must lead. Women must follow. Children must learn their proper places. Any deviation from this divine order brings judgment upon us all. Emma sat between Daniel and Mrs. Chen, her face carefully blank. Other young girls whispered and pointed. Their mothers nodded along with the sermon. After service, the church emptied quickly. No one approached the Thorntons. Monday morning brought the real pressure. Mayor Stevens arrived with the bank president and 3 mine investors, men whose financial backing, Daniel, needed for expansion. Daniel. The mayor's voice carried forced warmth. Welcome back. We're eager to hear about the survey results. The deposits are substantial. Miss Monroe's work was exemplary. Daniel gestured them into his study. Her maps show mineral concentrations that could transform operations. Excellent news. The bank president settled into a chair. Now, about verification. There's no need for verification. The work is accurate and complete. The investors exchanged glances. One cleared his throat. Daniel, We're not questioning the technical work. We're questioning the wisdom of proceeding based solely on a woman's assessment. For our own financial protection, for your peace of mind, Mayor Stevens interrupted smoothly. We propose hiring Samuel Garrett from Denver. He's a respected surveyor. He can review Miss Monroe's findings, confirm their accuracy, and provide documentation our investors can trust. There it was. The reasonable compromise. Pay Abigail for her time. Hire a man to verify her work. Satisfy everyone's concerns. Daniel looked at the men in his study. Reasonable men. Respectable men. Men offering him an easy path forward. No, he said quietly. Daniel. Miss Monroe detected a rock slide before it occurred. Her trained eye saved both our lives. Her expertise exceeds any surveyor I've employed, male or female. I won't insult her competence by suggesting it needs masculine verification. The bank president leaned forward. Your mine expansion requires financing. We can't approve loans based on work that raises questions about your judgment. Surely you understand our position. I understand perfectly. You're asking me to choose between truth and convenience. Daniel stood. I choose truth. Think of Emma, Mayor Stevens said. Think of her future in this community. The social consequences. Emma needs to see that integrity matters more than acceptance. That courage means standing for what's right even when it costs. Daniel opened the door. Gentlemen, thank you for your concern. I'll find financing elsewhere. They left in silence, disapproval heavy in their wake. That evening, Abigail quietly packed her belongings. Daniel found her folding maps by lamplight. You're leaving. I'm sparing you further trouble. She didn't look up. This has cost you enough already. Emma wants to see your maps. She's been asking all day. Daniel. Don't leave, please. He stepped into the room. I need you to stay. Not just for the work, for what you represent. For what you're teaching my daughter. Abigail's hand stilled. I'm teaching her that being different invites punishment. You're teaching her that authenticity matters more than approval. That competence speaks louder than prejudice. Daniel's voice roughened. She's been asking when she can study surveying properly, when she can have her own equipment. She wants to be like you. Abigail, the town will make her life difficult. Then she'll learn to be strong, like you. He paused. I'm requesting an emergency town council meeting for Thursday evening. I'm making a public statement about your work and your character. Let them hear truth. Spoken plainly. That's professional suicide. That's integrity. And Emma needs to see it. Daniel met her eyes. Will you stay? Will you let me stand for what's right? Abigail studied him for a long moment. Then she nodded slowly. I'll stay. Emma appeared in the doorway, uncertain. Miss Monroe. Will you show me the mountain maps now? Abigail's expression softened. Come here, sweetheart. Let me show you what we found. Daniel watched his daughter kneel beside Abigail. Studying charts by lamplight, Emma's face glowed with concentration. She asked intelligent questions. Abigail answered with patient thoroughness. This was worth fighting for. This moment. This possibility. This future where Emma could grow. Without invisible cages. Thursday would come. The town council would gather. Daniel would speak truth regardless of consequences. His daughter deserved to see courage modeled, not just preached. Whatever it cost, it would be worth it. Thursday evening arrived with cloudless skies and oppressive heat. Yet Anandolajmo full. The town hall filled to capacity, curious onlookers crowding every available space. News of the meeting had spread through town like wildfire. Daniel arrived with Emma and Abigail. Whispers followed them down the center aisle. Mrs. Caldwell's disapproval radiated from the front row. The bank president sat with arms folded. Mayor Stevens watched with carefully neutral expression. "This is irregular." "Daniel," the mayor said, "emergency council meetings require justification." "I'm providing justification." Daniel stood. Emma beside him. "For 3 weeks. Miss Abigail Monroe surveyed my northern territory. Her work was exemplary. Her expertise saved both our lives when she detected an unstable rock face minutes before it collapsed. In Naxite. Her geological assessments reveal mineral deposits worth hundreds of thousands of dollars." He paused, letting that number settle. Yet members of this community have suggested I hire a male surveyor to verify her findings. They've questioned my judgment. They've pressured my daughter. They've made Miss Monroe's presence here uncomfortable, despite her professional competence. Mrs. Caldwell stood. "This is about propriety, not competence. A woman working outdoors in split skirts, carrying equipment. A woman exercising professional skills through years of training." Daniel interrupted. "Skills most men in this room don't possess. Skills that prevented disaster. And identified resources that will benefit this entire community." Reverend Harris cleared his throat. "Daniel, we understand you're grateful for Miss Monroe's work, but there are larger principles at stake. Natural roles. Divine order. When we abandon these, we invite competence over prejudice, excellence over convention." Daniel's voice rose. We invite the possibility that women might possess abilities we've systemically denied them the chance to develop." Emma squeezed his hand. He looked down at his daughter's face, solemn, watchful, learning. "My late wife Sarah was an artist," Daniel continued, voice gentling. "She painted beautifully. After we married, she put away her brushes because proper wives didn't pursue art. She died never having painted again. I carry that regret every day." The room had gone silent. "I won't make that mistake with Emma. I won't teach her that dreams must bow to others' narrow expectations. Miss Monroe's work is exemplary. Her character is admirable, if this town can't recognize that. The failure is ours, not hers." He looked at the assembled crowd. I came west believing the frontier rewarded merit over birthright, that we judge character instead of convention. That we build something new, instead of recreating Eastern prejudices. Was I wrong?" Emma stood then, small hand still in her father's, and turned to face the crowd. She didn't speak. She just stood visible support for both her father and Abigail. For a long moment, nothing happened. Then a rancher's wife near the back stood. My daughter needs to see this. She needs to know competence matters more than compliance." Another woman rose. "Mine too." A man Daniel recognized from the miners' union stood. "Thornton's right. We came west to escape Eastern class systems. Why are we rebuilding them here?" Not everyone stood. Mrs. Caldwell remained seated, disapproval etched in every line. The bank president looked calculating. Reverend Harris appeared troubled but silent, but enough stood. Enough to shift the atmosphere from judgment to possibility. Mayor Stevens surveyed the room. Political instinct sharp. "8. Miss Monroe's credentials are verified through the Territorial University. If Daniel vouches for her work, that should suffice. I move we formally recognize her survey as acceptable documentation for mine expansion permits. Achieved our starting client." Is seconded. The rancher's wife called. The vote passed not unanimously, but decisively, walking home under stars. Emma held both their hands, Daniel's on one side, Abigail's on the other. You were scared, she observed quietly. Daniel nodded, terrified. But you did it anyway. Being brave doesn't mean not being scared. It means doing right anyway. He squeezed her hand. You stood with me. That took courage too. Miss Monroe taught me. She said standing for truth matters more than being comfortable. Abigail smiled down at Emma. You're a good student. The warm summer night embraced them. Stars wheeled overhead. The town behind them hadn't transformed completely. Prejudice remained. Resistance would continue, but something had shifted. Some possibility had opened, and Emma had seen her father stand for truth, even when it cost him. That lesson would last longer than any sermon about proper roles. That lesson was worth everything. Summer deepened into golden warmth. Abigail stayed in town, completing detailed geological reports and training Emma in basic surveying principles. Daniel watched his daughter bloom. Emma learned to use a compass, read topographical maps, calculate elevation from angle measurements. She asked endless questions. Abigail answered each one with patient thoroughness. Other young women began approaching Abigail hesitantly, the rancher's daughter, a merchant's niece. 3 girls from the schoolhouse. They asked quiet questions about education, about possibilities, about paths that diverged from expected trajectories. Abigail welcomed each one. She established informal evening sessions in Daniel's study, teaching basic mathematics and geological principles to anyone who wanted to learn. Mrs. Chen attended too, curious about the woman who'd caused such upheaval. You're planting seeds, Daniel observed one evening, watching Abigail explain rock strata to 6 attentive listeners. I'm answering questions. What grows from that isn't my responsibility. But Abigail smiled, though I'll admit, it's gratifying to see curiosity encouraged instead of crushed. The mine expansion proceeded with Abigail's survey as documentation. Investors grumbled, but couldn't deny the quality of her work, especially when initial drilling confirmed every one of her predictions about mineral deposits. Daniel's respect deepened into something more. He found himself watching her across the dinner table, admiring the way lamplight caught in her hair. He listened to her patient explanations to Emma and felt warmth spread through his chest. One evening in late August, after Emma had gone to bed, he found Abigail on the porch, studying stars. You're staying, he said, not a question. I've been offered several surveying contracts in the territory. Apparently word spread about the rockslide prediction. People want someone who reads land accurately. That's not what I meant. Daniel stepped closer. Stay here. Permanently. Not as an employee. As... He stopped. Suddenly uncertain, Abigail turned to face him. As what? Daniel. As a partner, in every sense. The words tumbled out. I want Emma to grow up knowing a woman of courage, learning from your strength, seeing that competence and kindness aren't mutually exclusive. And what do you want? You? I want to grow old beside someone who sees clearly, who stands for truth, who teaches my daughter and challenges me and makes me better than I was. He swallowed hard. I'm not offering convenience or protection. I'm offering partnership between equals. If that's something you'd want, Abigail studied him for a long moment. I've spent years alone rather than compromise my authenticity. I won't start now. I'm not asking you to compromise. I'm asking you to expand. Keep your work. Take your surveying contracts. Teach Emma and anyone else who wants to learn but do it as my wife, as Emma's mother figure, as my partner in building something better than what we inherited." Her expression softened. "You're offering me everything I never thought I could have. Family without cage. Belonging without conformity. Is that a yes?" "That's a yes." She smiled. And Daniel's chest expanded with something he'd thought lost forever. "I'll stay. We'll build this together, you, me, and Emma. A family that honors authenticity instead of crushing it. Aicho." He kissed her then, gentle and certain, stars wheeling overhead, when Emma found out the next morning. Her shriek of joy woke half the neighborhood. She threw herself at Abigail. Then at Daniel. Then back at Abigail. "You're staying. Really staying forever." "Forever," Abigail confirmed. Laughing. "If you'll have me, can I call you Mama?" Abigail's eyes filled. "I'd be honored." The wedding was small, held at the ranch house with the rancher's family. Mrs. Chen, a handful of townspeople who'd stood that night in the council meeting. Reverend Harris declined to officiate, so a circuit judge performed the ceremony. Emma served as witness. Beaming throughout, that autumn, Abigail established the territory's first surveying school, accepting both men and women students. Emma attended every session. The youngest student, by 5 years, but far from the least capable. Daniel watched his family grow not through blood alone, but through shared values and mutual respect. Emma thrived under Abigail's teaching. The mine prospered from accurate geological surveys. Other mining operations began hiring Abigail, then hiring her students. Change came slowly but steadily. Not everyone approved. Mrs. Caldwell never did soften, but enough people recognized competence when they saw it. Enough people valued truth over tradition. One late summer afternoon, nearly a year after Abigail's arrival, Daniel stood at the stage depot watching Emma prepare for a surveying expedition. His daughter, now 11, wore practical split skirts and carried her own equipment. Abigail stood beside her, double-checking instruments. "Ready?" Abigail asked. "Ready!" Emma adjusted her hat with confident precision. Someone nearby remarked, "She's not like other women." Daniel smiled, watching his daughter chart her own course. "That's exactly why she's extraordinary." Emma and Abigail headed toward the mountains. Sunlight catching on their surveying equipment, tools for seeing clearly, for mapping truth, for charting new territory. Behind them, the town continued its daily business. But seeds had been planted, possibilities had opened, and one family had chosen authenticity over conformity. Building something worth passing to the next generation, the warm season promised growth. The open horizon promised freedom, and love built on mutual respect promised to last. Daniel stood watching until they disappeared beyond the ridge, then turned toward home, toward the life they'd built together, toward the future they'd chosen through courage. It had cost everything and given back more. It had been worth it.